Welcome, everybody, to the second hour of Mind Shifters Radio. Today is Wednesday, April the 7th, 2021, and our call-in number is 563-999-3581, and press 1, and that puts you into queue to talk to us. We'd love to hear your comments and questions because that makes this your show. While we give Michael just a moment to get dialed in, I'll, as usual, direct you to our website, whyagain.org. and click on the bullseye or the Start Here button. They both take you to the same place. I invite you to listen to the MP3s of the special radio shows we've pulled out, where we actually walk someone through doing a worksheet or their process is around the work in some way that brings in a strong point. All of the radio shows are great. And so it makes it challenging to pick out just a few, but every now and then we hit one and it's like, this is a special show. And so I invite you to go and re-listen and put the tools to work in your life. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart, and welcome, everybody. Delighted, honored that you're here, and just loving the opportunity to have this conversation. And each time I find that when I have this conversation, I get to reinforce my understanding of how this process of healing works, and I get to enhance my comprehension of where the process goes next. Jeannie's been sharing what opened for her several days ago, and we had an interesting morning of processing this morning as there were some dreams moving through, and just another way to express about the process of the healing crisis became clear to me as we were processing. And that is that once you do a piece of work that opens up a file in your mind, so to speak. So the mind organizes things, and everything that's connected to any given event is linked into a file on that event, and every aspect of an event is linked to different aspects of that experience. And so if you don't mind me sharing, Jeannie, a little bit about what opened this morning, or maybe you'd like to share it, and I can throw in my insight. Are you mute, John, honey? Are you there?
I am.
Well, we were... Oh, okay.
Yes, go ahead and share. That's fine.
All right. So the piece that came clear to me was that, one of the things Jeannie processed through in that opening that she had the other day that was about getting out of using willpower and using the spiritual faculty of will instead was the situation of being not really trusted and therefore controlled by her power person. And that kind of, tended to move throughout her life. And some of the early dream states this morning that kind of act as each other's monitor when stuff's moving, and will awaken each other in the middle of a process that's happening and just be there for support. And so what she, as she had processed through this thing of not having to force her way through things with will, but rather opening what to her was the third, if you've been listening to the show for a while on this topic, the third measure was to be more with the gentle faculty of will. But the dream, and I realized that as a result of opening that file on being controlled, and then in order to compensate, to be good enough to be acceptable, Jeannie would take care of everything. She's didn't refer to it as OCD, and I sometimes refer to it as OCB, an obsessive compulsive blessing, because she tends to, with it, get a lot done. Although sometimes I need to say, Jeannie, stop. You're going to go get in the bath. Stop. But anyway, so what just became clear to me is that she had opened that file. She had to process through everything in that file. And so one of the dreams that she was on an airplane. When she was young, she'd wanted to be a stewardess. So she's the stewardess. And there are all these people on the plane, and they're all people from all different times in her life, people she's known through her whole life, and she's going through the plane, making sure they're all safe and taking care of them, like taking responsibility for everybody, which was kind of, at least my assessment. And if you have any thoughts, Jeannie, maybe you want to share them too, if this is accurate or off base at all, was just, in order to prove I'm good enough because Mom didn't trust me, I do everything right and I get everything done and I take care of everybody and everything. And, it's just too much of a load for one person to carry. Slow down a little bit and take care of yourself. But what became clear to me was just that as she had opened that a couple of days ago, she's been doing a lot of processing, and then this was another big piece of that process. And I put that out so that you have the recognition that when you do a piece of work, when you open a major file in your mind, there oftentimes is the ripple effect. We call it the healing crisis, that you're going to get to process through all of the untoward energies connected to a particular circumstance or situation that you open and uncover. So it's not always just as simple as ABC. There's a process to be done. There's a work to be done. And the work isn't something that, that happens in minutes. It takes a whole infrastructure to support people doing the work. And that's what this show is about. That's what this body of work is about. We're working to hand an infrastructure. There's a big conversation about infrastructure going on in the culture right now. There's been lots of promises made about it, not much done, and it looks like something's finally going to get done. And, without infrastructure, there can't be prosperity. There can't be accomplishment. Things break down. All kinds of crazy things happen. So what we're looking to do with this work is to continuously develop a more powerful, more solid infrastructure, and then through our intensives, through our videos, through our workshops, through this show, hand that infrastructure to people on the deepest level possible and help them to install it in their lives, to make it part of their lives so that, something happens. Oh, I have a bridge. I have infrastructure. I have a bridge to go across here. Oh, I'm in a healing crisis. It's okay. I can, instead of running off like my power person would have forced me to do, and that was go perform, I can stop. I can take a breath. I can lay down. I can take care of myself and nurture myself as I process through this old trauma. And so there was just another little refinement for me in that process you were in this morning, Jeannie. So thank you. And you have anything to share from that?
I was trying to take notes there as you were talking, and there was a thought that flittered by, and I didn't grab it.
One of those.
I'm sure it'll come back, but no, just it was real strange that there were all these people and that have actually been in my life, growing up and at church and everything else, and me just still trying to take care of everybody.
Well, we're here to support you putting yourself on the list and making sure that, like the instructions you would have given on an airplane, if you were a real stewardess in the sky, you'd be saying, and make sure you put your own mask on before you put on somebody else's. That you really do truly take care of you. That's our support for you. And we appreciate, one, who you be, and two, everything that you do as well. You're an awesome lady, and we appreciate you a lot.
Thank you. And thank you for being my support and waking me up when my unconscious. And I think sometimes, you had mentioned at breakfast this morning about journaling the dreams, especially during this heavy processing time. And I made the statement, I said, well, at least I dealt with all these people all at one time because they were all on the same plane.
You didn't have to go through each one of them one by one.
Yeah.
Mass cleaning out.
Mass canceling.
Yep. Sweet. Cool. All right, well, let's take a look at our reading for today from Why Is This Happening to Me? Again, we're on Chapter 9 and page 52. If you do not have a copy of the book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? I'm sad to say it's out of print at this point, although, because way back, almost a quarter of a century ago now when we published it. We spread over a period of a few years several tens of thousands of copies around the country and around the globe. So there are usually some relatively inexpensive copies of it available on Amazon or on eBay, and so it's usually available. And or you are always welcome to go to our website, whyagain.org, and download the book free. And so you can read it in digital format on your phone or on your computer, or you can print it off on your printer, however you want to do that. But we're in the topic in the chapter on blockage of truth on page 52, down toward the bottom of the page. And we've just been clarifying with the character. If you're not familiar with the book, it's a conversation with this character named Richard, who's this recalcitrant kind of guy who doesn't want to hear anything that I'm talking about, but somebody told him, he's on his third divorce, he's getting out of town, and on his way out west, he comes near Heartland. So somebody says, why don't you go by and just have a talk with Michael Ryce? So here we are having our talk. That's the book. And so we've been talking to him about how blockage of truth happens when we blame somebody else for the constructs of the pain in our own minds. And that when we undo blockage of truth by standing in the willingness to honor truth and really hear the truth and be with the truth, then we get to change everything. So I had just said to Richard, the more often you forgive in the false sense of, letting others off the hook, then the more likely your mind is to think that somebody else is the problem in your life. And when you do that, there'll be a tendency to create more separation. Of course, Richard is just running away from another marriage, his third one, and thinking that the solution lies in just getting out of town. He knows that these women are the problem in his life, and if he can just get rid of them, then he'll be all set. Separation idea. So he's not too happy with me at this moment, and that does happen on occasion. And so Richard was agitated at being challenged one more time with the idea that he caused his own pain, and proceeded to read me the riot act. Actually, Jeannie and I, we had a beautiful day here yesterday. It was 77 degrees, and we haven't, been out for dinner in weeks. We did do a family dinner, but we had a private dining room where we went on Easter. But other than that, we've been, in the fall, we would go out to restaurants that had outdoor seating, but we've just been kind of staying home. Dad's 88, and we want to keep him healthy and around for a long time yet. So, but yesterday was beautiful, and there's one of our favorite restaurants in town has an open dining room that they just open, actually literally open garage doors to kind of make it outdoor seating. So we went out to dine yesterday, and as we were sitting having dinner, I pulled out my phone, and when we got out of the car, there was a car parked right beside us, and there was a cute little poster from Margaritaville. If you remember that Jimmy Buffett song, Wasted Away Again in Margaritaville. And one of the lines in the song is, some people claim there's a woman to blame. And so I took a picture of this little bumper sticker, and I edited on my phone, and I scratched out the W-O, and some people claim there's a man to blame. And I posted on my Facebook page and said, well, what can you do? So here's Richard feeling like he's blamed again. So he says to me, well, that's the way it is. Other people have always been the cause of almost every problem. If only they would listen and think logically, he shrieked, as he momentarily forgot how the dynamics of projection and externalization had worked. I suppose thinking logically means thinking like you do, I volleyed with Richard. That reminds me of the old definition of a genius, someone who agrees with me. Thinking someone else is to blame is a good defense, Richard. But remember, you're the only one who's been there every time, and you're the common link in every event. I went on to refresh Richard's memory. Something we all need from time to time, and I offered to him, whether or not we're aware of it, whether or not we choose responsibility, we're involved in setting up everything that happens to us. This work is based on responsibility. It is your hostility that needs healing. You just torture yourself and make healing impossible by holding on to blame. Richard softens up a little bit and says, okay, I've been there every time. I know this is something I need to work through, and I will. Do you have any coffee? I'd like a cigarette, too. Richard was holding his breath. So here we go. When confronted with the truth and we're in blockage of truth, what do people do? They turn to their drugs. So here's Richard looking, he's holding his breath. Number one indicator that you're hiding something from yourself is that you're locking down your breath. And then, of course, what does he want? He wants caffeine. It's interesting. If you just go onto YouTube and do a search, you'll find, put in, I think it was ABC, put in ABC TV, coffee, and blood flow. And there's an interesting video that I believe it was a reporter from ABC that they had set up an interview. They went to a doctor's office, and she gets an MRI done, measuring blood flow to her brain. So she's got an MRI of her brain. And then she has a cup of coffee, and they do another MRI. And the physician points out that, take a look, here's how you tell how much blood is flowing in your brain. And he shows that with 1 cup of coffee, there's a 40% reduction in blood flow to the brain. Now, I don't care how you cut it, that's a pretty heavy-duty drug. Although it's the most common one in the culture. Everybody goes, oh, coffee, that's nothing. Coffee is seriously something. But anyway, that's not the topic. Cigarettes, same thing, nicotine. And of course, along with the nicotine in most cigarettes today, I believe there's something in the range of around 500 different chemicals just to make that leaf burn just right, just to get as much of the addictive substance into the lungs as possible and get people hooked. So we're going to enter into that conversation with Richard about addiction, and at the point where he's able to explode, he's going to tell his story, his reality, which is that somebody else is to blame, and then I confront his reality with the truth. And here we're moving from blockage of truth to truth. It's like, Richard, you've been there every time. This is about you. And his mind doesn't want to see the truth, so what does he automatically do? He looks around for drugs. There's a really awesome video, and I've bought a couple of copies of it so that I've got extras, that was done by a couple of young people that worked at a restaurant out in California. The restaurant is called
Cafe Gratitude.
Cafe Gratitude. One of the first things they do when you go into Cafe Gratitude is they ask you what you're grateful for. It's kind of part of their thing. And so this young kid, who's the son of the owner of the restaurant, greets this 60-ish, 100-pound overweight, New Jersey, tough old school kind of Italian guy. And the guy actually breaks down as he answers, what are you grateful for? What do you want? I think the question that day was actually, what is it you want? And he's like, I would just love for somebody to love me again. And I know with this grossly overweight body, that's never going to happen. And this kid just, kind of empathetically taps in with him, goes back to his father and asks for permission to work with him. So he takes him on and coaches him on changing his diet and dealing with the emotional issues in his life. Well, the whole film is very powerful. It really gives you a chance to look at the healing process and what a healing crisis really looks like. It's a pretty profound video. It's called May I Be Frank. Is that the correct title, Jeannie, do you recall? I know I sometimes
that is
turn
correct,
the title
and
around.
I put the link in the notes. It is correct.
Yeah.
May I Be Frank.
May I Be Frank. And so this kid works with this young man, or this older guy, actually two of them, and they decide they're going to make a documentary out of it. First time they've done that, and they did a pretty good job of it. But there's one scene, he's been estranged from the love of his life, who was a, teenage sweetheart. They were married, had a child. He's estranged from his daughter. But the one particular event that they show is that, he's in his apartment in California, and she's in, she lives in New Jersey still. And so they bring her out to do some processing with him. And, earlier in the documentary, they show these two kids going over to his apartment, and they go through everything in his cupboards. They're going to coach him on eating, thinking, and healing. And they go through, and they literally, they show them going through and dumping hundreds of pounds of sugar and junk and meat and, dead vegetables. They just clean all of the drugs out of his refrigerator and his cupboards. So he's sitting doing this process with his former wife, and of course, she doesn't exactly align with or fulfill all the goals that he has for her. So at one point, he uses one of his early life drugs, one that's been with him all of his life, and right there on the spot, he steps into this drug called rage, and he just flies into a rage at her. And it's interesting because you've heard me say before that when rage, which is one of the granddaddies of all of the drugs, when rage isn't enough to anesthetize the deep, unresolved pain, we'll tend to go to something stronger. So literally, he screams at his wife as he's getting up off of the couch, and he walks into the kitchen where he keeps his stash of drugs in the refrigerator and in the cupboard, or he used to, and he goes to the refrigerator, open it in order to fill his gut, to fill his belly with his drug. He anesthetises himself with food. But it's quite hilarious because he screams at her, he gets off the couch, he walks into the kitchen, opens the refrigerator like he's going to find a drug in there, and he just has to close the refrigerator again because there's only food in his refrigerator. Kind of interesting. And when you start observing yourself, when you want to use an anesthetic, and you choose to stay connected to love and breathe instead, a whole different thing happens. And that's what we're here to help people to understand, is how that process occurs. So that's about all I have on my mind for today, at least at this point. And it's about 21 minutes, 22 minutes after, so we've got a good almost 40 minutes left. So if you are out there in listener land, how can we support you? What's on your mind?
I thought of what it was that kind of flew by me.
Yeah.
You were talking about having to face and deal with all the links that were connected to the file folder. And
right.
What some people may not realize, and I don't think you mentioned it, because then we start talking about dreams, is that when you're asleep, the veil is open to the unconscious more so than when you're awake. Maybe talk about that just a little bit. And that's why it was easier for some things to just pop up.
Absolutely, yes. And just the fact that you've stepped into a whole new level of willingness to go for the healing and to access things, that willingness opens the veil on a whole other level. And of course, in sleep, that's why oftentimes dreams will, if we really spend time with them and study them, will be a reflection of what's going on in the unconscious, what we've hidden from ourselves. Actually, there's going to be a new section the next time we do the Laws of Living Intensive. We used to have a small section in it on dreams, but we've expanded that. We're going to do a significant piece of work with dreams in the next Laws of Living Intensive when we do that. But this barrier, in our normal waking day for the person who's holding their breath all the time, sugar, junk food, alcohol, white bread, white flour, white sugar, caffeine, nicotine, and all of those sorts of things, that person has really created this thick, impenetrable barrier. In the ancient teachings, it was called the veil. You'll remember they said the veil of the temple must be rent in twain. What does that mean? That means that the barrier between the subconscious and the unconscious must be opened. And for most people in their normal waking state, they live above that barrier. They don't touch anything under the surface. If they're enraged because of what somebody else did. They're not enraged because there's rage in them. If they're in fear because of something outside of it. It's got nothing to do with what's going on inside themselves. So at night, what happens is this barrier kind of tends to open somewhat, and more information becomes available from that unconscious mind. Although, because of the different forms of denial and the belief systems that operate that are totally and completely against what's going on in the unconscious, the tendency is for those things to come out in some distorted way or some symbolic way. And so that's something we'll be covering in our next Laws of Living Intensive. It's a fairly extensive dream analysis process. And and if Carrie happens to be listening, Carrie, we appreciate the fact that you worked with me and we put that new piece of the puzzle together for the intensive. So thank you. So that barrier tends to be a little more open and makes things a little more accessible, and it can be really profitable to study your dreams, to really look at and allow yourself to be in touch with what's going on at that unconscious level. And as it becomes safe enough to access unconscious dynamics, and that's really what a lot of this whole body of work is about. This whole infrastructure is about how to access the hidden parts of your own mind. And, a very common comment that we'll hear from people is, geez, I didn't even know that was in me. I didn't know I ever thought that way. Well, I didn't know that feeling was hiding in me. They're the kinds of comments that we get. So as you start to open the unconscious, you begin to function more with more of your faculties in hand, and therefore you tend to create your life out of a more conscious place rather than just playing out the old unconscious dynamics as so many people do. So part of this whole process of healing is quite literally, making the unconscious conscious. And if we refuse to make the unconscious conscious, then there will come a point, because the thrust of the mind is always to bring forward what's in hiding. And if we keep the barrier tight, we keep it locked, then those things will tend to come forward in aberrant ways that lead to crazy behavior, motivated by unresolved unconscious conflicts. So when you choose to bring those unconscious conflicts to the surface, you choose to open the veil of your own temple, life just becomes a whole lot easier and a whole lot more peaceful, because you're not repeating the unresolved patterns of pain from the past. You'll remember Yeshua 2,000 years ago, he says, take care of the heart, for out of it are the issues in life. And that word heart doesn't refer to the physical organ in your chest. That word heart refers to the unconscious. He's saying, take care, look into, deal with what's in your unconscious mind. And, if we talk to psychologists today, the average psychologist will tell us that probably somewhere between 90 and 95% of the content that moves in us on a daily basis is unconscious. Well, if 90 to 95% of your life is unconscious, that means 90 to 95% of your creative process is unconscious. And a signal that somebody's creative process is unconscious is that you'll oftentimes hear people who create unconsciously going, I just don't know why this happened. I don't have any idea where this came from. Why is this happening to me again? Because we're hiding from ourselves. And, of course, this chapter we've been reading in the book is about blocks of truth. The previous chapter was about denial, dissociation, projection, externalization, trying to pretend that the cause of our pain is outside of us. And so we're looking to reverse that understanding and to realize that I'm not going to feel anything that isn't inside of me. I can't. It's not possible. And if I'm feeling it because it's inside of me, if I don't know what it's about or what's going on or have the tools to resolve it, then I'm going to tend to be stuck in, the title of my book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? What we're looking to do with these tools is to open a space for people to be able to resolve, to take care of their unconscious and remove those issues from their lives. So that's where we want to go with these tools, and we hope that we can be of service to you. We've got about a half an hour left, so if you're out there in listener land, our call-in number, if you're on one of those stations where we can't see you in our control panel, our call-in number is 563-999-3581. If you call that number, you'll be listening to the show, and then if you push 1, that will put a hand up in the control panel. Jeannie will turn on your microphone and introduce you by your area code, and we'll be having a conversation. So if you're out there in listener land, how can we support you? What's happening in your life? What's happening with your comprehension of the tools? Can we help to improve your comprehension and use of the tools and the integration of this whole infrastructure of forgiveness, first century Aramaic forgiveness, into your life? How can we support you? Now, don't everybody raise your hand at once, but I bet that with what's been said so far, that just about every person that's listening, if we were in a one-on-one space, if I happen to be in your hometown and just finished presenting what I've presented, what Jeannie and I have talked about in the last half hour, as I walk down off the stage in your local library or your local pub or your local university or jail, whatever facility I was speaking in, I had the conversation I've had so far and walked down off the stage, what would you be coming over and asking me? We'd probably start out with, well, Michael, I just have this one quick question. So the purpose of this show is to answer that one quick question that you have. If you push 1, we'll be having a conversation. And, if you're shy because, I'm going to be on the radio, I don't know how my voice will sound, it might be shaky. Can you make it okay if your voice is shaky? It's like, so what? Your voice is shaky. Well, my question, Michael, I've just started. I don't even know what question to ask. Well, whatever question's on your mind is the question to ask. And oftentimes, the most basic question serves people who've been doing the work for years, because it takes them back to having to look at some of the basics that maybe have been ignored and bring awareness back into whatever's happening in your life. So how can we support you? What's on your mind? We've got about 28 minutes left. Time for a conversation. All is quiet on the Western Front, Jeannie?
It is. There's no hand up and no questions in the chat room.
Shall we just be silent until somebody raises their hand? That probably wouldn't work that well. Be a little bit too much dead airspace. By the way, I've been listening to people about what might work for an additional class in our intensive. We're going to put a bonus class in because we've recreated in a much deeper format the Power Person worksheet, is taking a little more time to go over than we had thought would take. So I'm looking at maybe Saturday morning would be a possible time to do a class. We'll talk about it tonight, but if you're listening, if you're in the intensive, just put your thinking cap on and see what you think. And that way, in particular, Peter, who's in Sweden, can participate, because, he's participating in the intensive, but he isn't staying up till 2 in the morning to do the classes. He's doing them by video. But if you're out there, Peter, put your hand up, say hello, tell us how your process is going. Tell us what's happening. I've been thinking maybe Saturday or, well, a lot of people at church on Sunday mornings, and they make it early enough would have to be in the morning. So maybe, I don't know, what do you think, Gene? Maybe something like 11 o'clock on Saturday. Just put that out at this point, and then let people think about it. Wednesday night we'll talk about it, or tonight during the intensive.
Yeah, because we're now on week 11. I mean, this second intensive has flown.
Yeah, it really has. For sure. So how can we support you? What's on your mind? I was reading, we've talked about this on the show before, it was a couple of years ago, but there was an article, I believe it was in Newsweek, about a pair of twins that were born, and they're calling it, I think they said they're calling it a rescue hug. Yeah, rescuing hug. And the nurse in the hospital, there were a pair of twins born, they were premature, and one of them was failing pretty badly, and they didn't think that the child was going to make it. They were both in incubators, so they took the child that was doing stronger and doing better, expected to survive, and broke hospital policy and put the child into the incubator with the child that was failing. They didn't expect was going to live. And the child that was doing well, of her own volition, raised her arm and put it around her sister. At which point, the second child, whose body temperature was fluctuating, heart rate was unstable and in a danger zone, all of a sudden, heart rate stabilized, body temperature stabilized, and the child began to thrive. And just a reminder of the power of the presence of active love. I was actually back in 1995. I'm just looking at the article now. Briley, B-R-I-E-L-L-E, and Kyrie, K-Y-R-I-E, 1995. The article, I think, was in Newsweek magazine. It meant they were 12 weeks premature, so each weighed 2 pounds. One was not expected to survive. And let's see, it goes on to say at 3 weeks, one twin went into critical condition. Heart rate was soaring, oxygen level dropping, turning blue. Nurses tried everything and they couldn't lose the child. And one nurse, courageously, a woman named Gail Kasparian, decided to put the stronger twin next to her sister. Never been done before in the U.S. To say that the standard of practice was to put the babies in separate incubators to reduce the risk of infection. So they say that the weaker twin snuggled up to the stronger twin. The stronger twin put her arm around her. Everything instantly stabilized. The power of the presence of love and the power of touch, of just really being there with and for each other. Profound to realize that in some circles in this culture, as we've developed so far out of harmony with truth, it's illegal to touch a child. Like, how bizarre does it have to get before we really start to do a reassessment in our culture and say, what? What's been going on? What's it all about, Elfie? And my offering is that it's about using in and as the active presence of love. And, of course,
Michael.
extending touch. Yes, sweetie?
Susan Bingham pressed 1 again, and I didn't realize that she sent me a text. And then we do have some other hands just popped up. Susan, you're on.
Great. Let's say hello.
All right. Well, I was going to save, if you have other hands, take them. I was going to save this question for tonight. It's about the personal power, the power person worksheet.
Worksheet?
So,
okay. Well, that'd probably be good for the intensive tonight. So if that works, that would be cool.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. All right.
All right.
So let's go with...
we have 2 hands up. The first one's area code 314. You're on the air. Who do we have?
Hello, Jeannie and Michael. It's Doug.
Hey, Doug.
Hey, Doug. Welcome. Good to hear your voice.
I hope it's okay. I'm in the car. If it's not, that's okay. But hopefully you can hear me
fine.
all right.
Yep,
okay.
You're loud and clear.
I wanted to comment on your story about Jeannie, how her life, how her motivation coming out of that unconscious need to be okay by making everybody okay and so on. And I was just contemplating, I wanted to talk a little bit about how much our world is probably driven by that. I mean, everyone almost, it seems to me, most folks would be operating out of some level of that unconsciously, even somebody like Mother Teresa or Elon Musk or, people in government. And I just thought it might be a worthy discussion to talk about that and what the world would be like if we could get past that so that we would be really expressing not from a driven place at all, but from the truth of our being and our real purpose and an inspired life. So it just seems like the whole planet would be different to me, and I kind of wonder if these sort of similar or not on that.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. The planet would certainly be different, and there's an interesting dichotomy here too, and that is that yes, many people are driven by that sort of a thing, and yet I think being there for others is a natural attribute of human life. Distinction is if you're driven by it, if it's a compulsive sort of thing rather than something that's motivated and comes from the presence of love. And that would be the difference. And as I work through any form of hostility or fear, then I can move out of anything being compulsive. And I might do all the same behaviors. But the space that I'm living from, and therefore the space that I create in my world, would be totally different. And then the other part of the dichotomy for me is that, and the same people who often are driven by those things, when there's unresolved pain that starts to surface, they live in the blame game. So there's the other side of, what's going on in our culture and driving our culture so deeply is, we just look out in the political world right now and watch how, it's one person pointing a finger at another after another after another after another, and it's all somebody else's fault. And my take would be that they are all dynamics to be resolved within ourselves, and then I think we'd be more likely to come out as the presence of love and do things to serve humanity because that's what we naturally do, rather than out of compulsion, and therefore some sort of aberrant unconscious dynamic which will tend to, in the end, screw things up. When we go in and clean up our minds and remove that compulsivity, that's when we can really, truly step out as human beings. And we're going to realize that, as the old saying goes, we are our brothers and sisters keepers. Because the truth is, there's only one of us. We're all connected. But do I come from a place of unresolved pain, fear, rage, guilt, grief? Or do I come from a space of love is, to me, what makes a difference. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, there's two things that I think are really significant there. One, that the blame game is like a sign or an indicator. You know, it's like a clue. Where is this coming from? And I think that's important. And because, as you said, the behavior might be very similar in either case. And then the other thing that I find profound is you saying that it's our nature to serve one another. It's just the nature of the true being self to want to serve other people, not being driven to do it, but just by nature that's what we would do in the clear space. So, I kind of would suggest then from that maybe somebody like Elon Musk is indeed maybe doing his purpose. We would assume he's not being driven to stay up all night at his factory other than his genuine desire to serve.
You know, from what little I know of him, that seems like a pretty strong motivator. I look at Mother Teresa, and it seems to be very much the same.
Very good. All right. So that helps me clarify, because that was, you know, one of the things I was wondering is some of these, I mean, a lot of people just do and accomplish great things, and it seems like with so much unconsciousness, I was wondering, you know, how many people are truly living that out of their beingness, you know. So those are some really great clues about how to discern that. So thank you. That's all I had about that.
Cool. All right, sir. Appreciate you. Hope all is well, and safe travels.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Blessings. Bye-bye. Miss Jeannie, you've got another hand up?
Well, it just disappeared just a moment ago, and I do not see that number still on the switchboard. So if you're still out there listening and you were the one that had your hand up, please press 1. We've got 12 minutes, so we've got plenty of time.
So if you're out there in listener land, we would love to hear your sweet voice. And it looks like we lost that other caller. So, Miss Susan, do you want to go ahead with your question about the Power Person worksheet?
Yeah, and then you can mention it again tonight, too.
Okay. Well, I was just thinking about it, and I thought, where in the Power Person worksheet is this? And I'm not sure. It's in there, but it's a question anyway. You talk about our needs, and I'm assuming that you're assuming that we have not only the basic needs of shelter and food and rest and contact of some sort, and I'm not going to try to define that. But I was wondering when does a perceived need become not a need but a goal? And I asked this very personally. A very close family member who is no longer living really used to manipulate her family members and us by saying, I'm not getting my needs met. And her needs were emotional needs and wishes. They were goals for closeness and for certain things to be done by somebody else rather than herself. And it was, so when she says, I'm not getting my needs met, that's a trigger for me. And I look at that, but I thought I'd ask you, what are the needs? What do you perceive of it? I sensed that in whatever worksheet we're talking about, you had quite a long list of needs beyond the basic ones.
Right. Well, for me, your question would probably relate to the threshold of awareness, the difference between a goal and a need. I would proffer that a need would be something that has and that someone doesn't particularly think of as a goal would be something that has been a goal in previous times, perhaps in generations, and has just become an unconscious demand of the world, an unconscious need, but at one time was probably more in the arena of being a goal.
Can you give an example?
I wouldn't see much difference between the two.
Can you give an example?
Can I give one?
Oh, please. Yeah, yes, Jeannie, my brain wasn't onto one yet, so please take it over.
And this may not be the same, but this just happened this morning. Dad walks into the kitchen to eat, and he's on his walker, and he pushes it past his chair, and we pull his chair out for him, and he sits down. We push him up under the table. And there have been a couple of times in the last week that it was like, oh, I need to get to the bathroom quick or something like that. And so I would pull his walker out from around where he had pushed it in and put it in front of him so that he could immediately get up and get his walker and go. Well, I was washing dishes. Michael had gone outside to do the compost, and Dad's just sitting there, and he goes, pull my walker around. I had to breathe for a second. I mean, it was a split second, but it was like, I had pulled it around for him a couple of times this week because he needed to get to the bathroom in a hurry. And then this morning, now it became almost a command, to do it for him, which he can pull his walker around when he stands up. So it was sort of like he needed it at an earlier time, and then this morning all it was a goal. He wanted me to do it. It wasn't that he needed me to do it.
Right.
Is that in that line, Michael?
That's true.
Go ahead, Susan.
My thought is that many of us think of things that we want. We think of them as needs. And if we use the word need, we put an additional pressure on the other person who should be delivering for us. It makes it sort of like similar to when somebody says, God told me. Well, you can't override God's word, So a need is a scary word to me. It's a word to be reckoned with.
Yeah, it kind of moves into the arena of, you're not meeting my needs, moves into the arena of manipulation, I would think, quite often.
Right. Right. And unfortunately, the couple that I'm talking about, the husband didn't realize what his wife was doing, but they were very uncomfortable with each other, a lot of fighting and stuff. But I think he felt totally cowed by her use of the word need, and then he felt inadequate because he either didn't want to meet that need or he couldn't. And it was just amazing to see. They were very close family members, and we saw a lot of this, and we saw it in the family of origin too, a dynamic that kept working out. So anyway, if we run across go ahead.
Yeah, it sounds like it's moving into the arena of manipulation.
Yeah,
and
it clearly was. I think, with her.
Once in a while, as Jeannie had just said and I've observed, her dad's really sweet and really cooperative, but once in a while it's like, kind of the message I get, sweetie, is, well, I don't want to do this for myself, and you're supposed to do it for me.
Right.
Yeah, that's how it felt this morning, and I was washing dishes, so my hands were in the water, so I had to dry my hands off, and I could have said, no, you get it, but I didn't. I got his walker for him and pulled it around, but it was like all of a sudden, I had done it a couple of times this week because he really did need the assistance to get going quicker, and then this morning, all of a sudden, it was just like, do it. It's like, what?
That is a shock.
And it came from a place of command rather than request.
Yeah. Right. I did notice my mother's dad was like that. He was a very sweet man, a very funny man, but he would get cantankerous and demanding, and my mother would roll her eyes and, how dare he, she'd whisper to me, how dare he ask. But I wondered if it was just sort of the aging process, kind of hardening of a certain artery or something. It's really not them. Still hard to take, though, Jeannie. I'm with you.
It just gave me a split second to breathe, but I recuperated quickly from it. But it still, was like, what?
I know. Right, I get it. Question number 2. I'm very interested in dreams, partly because I have the weirdest dreams, and often they just float off before I can even sit up and grab a pencil. And I have pencil and paper right there. And what I just love it, Jeannie, that you had dreams that seemed to be so much clearer, coherent, and linking to your present life in a way that you could get.
Yeah, but there's sometimes I have dreams and it's like, whoa, where did that come from, or what is it even trying to say? And, I had one the other night, and I've actually, it's been a while since I've drawn. I used to draw a lot, and I've gone through and looked on Google for some images. There was this man, and I mean, like I told Michael, I said, he's like coming towards me, but it's like shoulder first. It's like, I don't know, it was a weird stance the way he was coming at me. And I said, it sort of looks like he's got a skirt on, he's got a vest on, and some kind of boots that aren't really boots. And finally I got around to it that it was like Native American. And but I haven't yet gotten, I want to draw him. I did a Google search of Native American warriors and everything else to try to find one that was like dressed like that. And I haven't found it yet, so I guess I'm going to have to get out my charcoal. But it was just, I haven't got the gist yet. He didn't say anything to me. It wasn't like he was threatening. He was just kind of coming towards me. And it's like, what message is this? And I told Michael, I said, the only thing right off the top that I could come up with was that it was an ancestral strength, and it was at the same time that I got the message of stepping out of willpower and stepping into will. And so I think that he was telling me that I had a strength there, that I didn't need to push it with the willpower, that I just needed to let the will be there, but I'm not sure. So, I have dreams sometimes too, and it's like, what is that? What does it mean? What's it trying to say? And, just journaling it. But now one of the things that I started doing, and I said, oh no, I've turned into Michael, is I turn on my phone and I'll just speak the message into, I have like a little notepad thing in my phone, and so I can hit the microphone and just say a line or two or something just to kind of kick it into memory then the next day when I look at it, and it's quicker than trying to write it down. But
that's good. That's
Michael, do you have anything on that about dreams that you can't interpret or can't figure out what they're trying to tell you?
Yeah, I usually, if I don't have a clue, if I don't really connect with what's coming up in the dream, the best thing I've found is ask Ruka, ask to be shown, and then just pay attention. And sometimes it comes up in the next conversation or the next piece of music that happens to come on the radio, or any number of things will start to clue you in. And if you don't get it, then ask the next night before sleep for support. Okay, so last night I had this dream and I don't get it. Unconscious, Ruka, how about some more? Give me a little different level of insight.
That's a good idea. I haven't done that. Yeah. I do know that once I was in therapy with a Jungian years ago.
Right.
And they do dream stuff. I was dreaming gangbusters, long, epic dreams.
Right.
And I'd remember them and write them down. So I do think there's something to do with the intention to remember dreams, the intention to dream. Yeah.
Called having a goal. Remember, the mind is designed to fulfill our goals. So, absolutely, right on track.
Okay.
And we are down to less than a minute. The show is going to cut us off momentarily. So, young lady, I appreciate you. We'll see you in the class tonight. And everybody, have the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give the world. Blessings. Bye-bye.